It began with the sound of breaking glass and a silence that swallowed an entire ballroom. In a world gilded by wealth and pride, one man stood drenched in red wine under the glare of cameras, while laughter from a billionaire's wife echoed through the air like a cruel melody. What she didn't know was that the man she tried to humiliate would soon destroy everything she held dear, not through anger, but through quiet, deliberate dignity. That night at the Western Foundation gala was supposed to be a celebration of power and prestige. The chandeliers sparkled, the elite whispered, and arrogance flowed as freely as the champagne. But when Evelyn Hale mistook Marcus Reed for someone beneath her, she set in motion a chain of events that would shatter her family's billion-dollar empire and expose the true cost of arrogance before the entire world. By morning, the story had spread across every screen, every headline, and every boardroom. One act of pride had turned into global disgrace, while the man who never raised his voice became a symbol of grace under fire. What began as an insult at a glittering gala became a lesson that would echo across industries and empires alike. Dignity always outlasts power. The music halted the instant the glass shattered. Red wine streamed down his chest as the billionaire's wife smirked. "Maybe now you look like you belong here." Cameras flashed. Guests gasped. The man she had just drenched in front of the entire gala didn't utter a word. He only stared at her, calm, composed, unshaken. Minutes later, that same woman who laughed at his silence would be on her knees begging for mercy as her family's billion-dollar empire crumbled in public. What he revealed next wouldn't just destroy a deal, it would erase her legacy. The crystal chandelier scattered 1,000 tiny sparks across the ballroom, where the evening's elite gathered for the annual Western Foundation Gala. The air was thick with wealth, power and arrogance heavier than any perfume. Laughter rang out, glasses clinked, and the hum of privilege filled the room. But within minutes, a single act would turn that luxury into humiliation. At the heart of it all stood Marcus Reed, quiet, dignified, observant. He wasn't there to impress anyone. He had been invited as a keynote donor, a man whose company had quietly funded education programs across the country. Few in the room realized that Marcus was also the chairman of Reed Global Industries, one of the top 5 defense innovators in America. But to Evelyn Hale, the billionaire host's wife, none of that mattered. All she saw was a man she didn't recognize, someone she believed didn't belong among the powerful. "Excuse me," she said, stepping closer, her tone dripping with disdain. "Are you with catering?" Marcus turned to her calmly. "No, ma'am. I'm an invited guest." Her laughter sliced through the music. "A guest? At a $10,000 a seat dinner?" She turned toward the crowd with a mocking grin. "Isn't that adorable?" Heads turned. Some guests shifted awkwardly, unsure how to react. Marcus remained silent, his calm demeanor only fueling her irritation. "You know," she continued loudly, "some people just don't know when they're out of their depth." Marcus met her eyes evenly, "And some people don't realize when they're out of their character." The tension crackled through the room. A waiter froze mid-step. Cameras tilted discreetly toward the scene. Evelyn's smile faltered before she grabbed a nearby glass of wine. "You must be thirsty," she said, and before anyone could react, she poured the red liquid across his chest. Gasps filled the ballroom. The wine splattered across the marble floor, staining his shirt, and then silence. Cold, suffocating silence. Evelyn smirked again. "There, now you look more appropriate for your level." Marcus didn't flinch. Calmly, he picked up a napkin from the table and wiped his hand. Then in a voice so steady it sent a tremor through the air, he said, "You just made the most expensive mistake of your life." He turned and walked out. No shouting, no glance backward. Within minutes, social media exploded. Guests had recorded the entire incident. High-definition humiliation spread across every platform. Wine and ruin trended within the hour. By the time Evelyn's husband, Charles Hale, woke the next morning, the damage was already done. The video had 40 million views. Sponsors were withdrawing. Headlines branded it the Gala of Shame. Charles stormed into his study, slamming his phone onto the desk. "Do you realize what you've done?" he shouted. Evelyn folded her arms. "It's being blown out of proportion." He's not somebody," Charles interrupted, his voice sharp. "That man you humiliated was Marcus Reed, the CEO of Reed Global, the very company reviewing our $1 billion defense proposal." Evelyn froze. You're lying. I wish I was. Before she could speak again, his assistant rushed in, breathless. Sir, the Pentagon meeting's been canceled. They've blacklisted Hale Aerospace indefinitely. Charles went pale. Indefinitely? Yes, sir. Effective immediately. He sank into his chair, burying his head in his hands. My God. Meanwhile, in Washington, Marcus sat across from the Deputy Secretary of Defense in a quiet conference room. Proceed with the decision, he said evenly. Hale Aerospace no longer meets ethical standards for partnership. The official nodded. Understood. Marcus stood, straightened his tie, and walked out. No triumph. No visible satisfaction, only purpose. 2 days later, every major outlet carried the story. Defense contract terminated after CEO's wife's racist outburst. Hale Aerospace's stock plunged 73% in a single afternoon. Charles Hale resigned from his own board to preserve what little dignity remained. Evelyn became the most hated woman on social media, hounded by cameras, abandoned by sponsors, shunned by the same crowd that once praised her arrogance. For Marcus, the silence that followed was the loudest justice of all. A week later, during a televised interview, a news anchor asked him, Mr. Reed, after all that humiliation, what made you stay silent that night? Marcus smiled faintly. Because noise doesn't create change, he said. Dignity does. The clip went viral again, this time not as a scandal but as a message. Months later, the Hales sold their mansion to pay mounting lawsuits. Evelyn began volunteering at a community shelter as part of her restitution. Cameras followed her still, but she appeared older, quieter, stripped of the arrogance that once defined her. One evening, as she served dinner at the shelter, Marcus arrived unannounced. He was there to deliver new technology donations through his company. Their eyes met for the first time since that fateful night. Evelyn froze, unsure if she should speak. Marcus approached her calmly. How are you finding your new role? Evelyn swallowed. I'm learning what service actually means. He nodded. Good, keep learning. She looked down. I'm sorry, Marcus paused, then said, You should be, but don't waste the lesson. He turned to leave, stopping at the doorway. One more thing, he added without looking back. Evelyn frowned. What's that? You said I didn't belong there, he said, glancing over his shoulder. You were right. I belong above it. And with that he walked away, leaving behind the woman whose pride had cost her everything. A month later, Marcus announced the launch of the Hale Foundation for Human Integrity, funded entirely by Hale Aerospace's forfeited assets. Its mission, to train future leaders in corporate ethics and racial awareness across Fortune 500 companies. At the Foundation's first conference, Marcus addressed an audience of CEOs, lawmakers, and students. Power without character is a loaded weapon, he said. Wealth without empathy is just noise. But dignity outlasts everything, even empires built on arrogance. The room erupted in applause. Outside, reporters gathered as he stepped into his car. One called out, Mr. Reed, do you forgive her? Marcus looked into the cameras, calm as ever. Forgiveness isn't for her, he said. It's for the lesson the world needed to see. As the car pulled away, city lights glimmered across the tinted windows. Somewhere behind him, another gala was already being planned, another room full of laughter and ego. But none would ever forget the night a billionaire's wife poured wine on a man she thought was beneath her, only to drown her own empire in the spill.